Hey JDB, today we're going to be making some chocolate chip scones. I hope you're ready. The first thing you have to do though before you begin is preheat your oven. You want to preheat that oven to 425, so please make sure that's the very first thing you do before you begin. Now watch your rest to see what to do. Here today we're going to be making chocolate chip scones. I'm going to also show you how to make blueberry scones as an alternative. So watch me as I go here. I've got 2 cups of flour here. I've got a 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, half teaspoon of salt. Please make sure you know the difference between the tablespoon and the teaspoon and you get those ones right. I'm going to get my butter here. I've got my egg. I've got my 3/4 cup that I measured with 1/4 3 times, and I've got my 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now over here with the butter is what I want to show you. So this is actual butter. You can use margarine as a substitute, but I had butter, so I'm gonna use it. What I've done is on the package you can see they measure them out. So this is what half a cup of butter looks like. So I've just cut it into 1/4. And actually 1/4 makes 4 tablespoons. So then if I go and cut this into fourths, now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons. Over here I've already cut up. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 tablespoons. So watch what I'm going to do, because that's what I wanted to show you here, is how I cut up my butter. Now you don't have to do this if you have a pastry blender at home. You know that thing that kind of looks like I don't know, it looks like a potato masher, but it's not, that we have at school. Well, if you have one of those at home, then you don't have to bother cutting this up, but I don't. So what I do is I just cut up my butter really small into little tiny chunks, because that's one of the first things that I'm going to have to do is work in that butter. Okay, so this is actually here 6 tablespoons of butter. So let me show you what the recipe says. It says put together your flour, your sugar, your baking powder, your salt. Put all those together, mix them together just gently there. Okay, I'm actually just going to use my tablespoon measure here to just get those mixed up. Next, and most importantly, what you want to do now is you want to put in that butter. And what you need to do is you actually need to cut in your butter, and that's what a pastry blender is used for. A pastry blender is meant to cut the butter in. But if you don't have a pastry blender, as I don't, you could use 2 knives. They suggest on videos to use 2 knives. Well, this takes forever. Okay, so what I found works a lot better, and what I suggest for you to do is just to kind of go in, and with your hands you're just going to crumble that butter. Now what you have to be careful of is that the butter's not too warm. My butter was straight from out of the fridge, and so it's actually cold. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of making it nice and fine and crushing up that butter inside of there. Now if there's some balls of butter left, that's ideal, because what you actually want when you have a scone is these little pockets of buttery bliss. So what happens is then when they're baking in the oven, that butter melts and it leaves a nice little air pocket in there, and then flavored with butter. Delicious. So if you can see, I'm just kind of making a little bit of a crumble mixture. So once I've got it into a nice kind of crumbly mixture, little pea-sized parts, make sure you're washing your hands prior, as I have. I've also sanitized my counter. If you've noticed, I've got my spray here. I've already sanitized my counter, and I've actually already even floured it so that it's ready to roll out. So this is probably the part that takes the longest amount of time, is just working in that butter. You need to work in that butter to make sure that it's making a nice consistent kind of crumbly mixture. Okay, so now you can see it's a lot different than it was before, and you can see a lot of that butter is worked in there, and you see the little tiny balls that I've got. So if I've got some bigger ones, I just kind of press my flour into it, get both hands in there. Again, make sure they're clean, because if not, you're going to end up with gray dough. Okay, so now I've got my flour mixture. I'm just going to make a little hole in the middle. I'm also going to grab my spatula here so I can do this easier. Now I've got my 3/4 cup measured with 1/4 3 times, making 3/4 cup of sour cream. I've put my vanilla already in there. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Next, what I'm going to use this bowl for is to crack my egg. I want to do that to make sure that there's no shells. Now I did knock this on the side of the bowl, but another thing that you can do is just take the knife and just knock it on top. Make sure you knock it hard enough. If you tap, 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 it tends to put little tiny shells inside. So I checked that. No shells, we're good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of breaking up my egg inside here, and I'm just going to slowly mix it. And what I'm actually kind of doing, what I suggest on the recipe, is that you just kind of press it together. Now it will look like it's more dry than wet, but as you press it and you start to work in that dry mixture, you'll notice that it combines really, really nicely. So continue to do that until you get a nice ball that's forming, and you can see it's starting to already. Now, don't get your hands in there too soon, because if you get your hands in there, what's going to happen, you're going to get dough all over your hands, okay? But I can see that it's starting to form a ball. This takes a lot of strength, so you might want to ask for some help from someone who's got maybe some stronger muscles than you. I'm just going to take this dough, pull it off my spatula here, because I want to start to press it in to itself. So you see how mostly it's all formed here? Okay, now what I'm going to do is I just use my fingertips, and I'm trying to press the dry stuff into the wet stuff, okay? And just kind of turning it around, making sure I've got all of that there together. And I can see that I might even need to put a little bit more flour on this because it's a little bit dry. I mean, a little bit wet. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to kind of, it will be a little bit sticky. That's okay. The nice thing about scone dough is I find that it's very forgiving. Now see, this is the problem about touching it too soon, is because then your hands get all full of, you know what we didn't put in? We didn't put in the chocolate chips. My bad. Back in the bowl. And let's sprinkle in, now I think yours says 1/3 cup of chocolate chips. In my house the kids ate them, so that was only how many we had. So
they tasted good.
So unfortunately, that's all we can put in, is all we have. I'm going to just put in a little bit more flour, because I do notice that this is a little bit sticky. So just give me a second here. Got my flour back here. Just going to sprinkle a little bit on. Okay, so my dough was a little bit moist, so I just went ahead and put a little bit more flour on it. Now you can roll this out, but you can also just pat it out. Oftentimes I like to just pat it out for speed. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of flour onto my rolling pin, and I'm just gonna one way and then the next to make a nice little circle. I don't need to get too thin. I want it to be about 1 inch thickness, which is about the segment of your finger. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a knife, cut that into quarters. Okay, then I'm going to cut it again, cut the quarters into 8s. So it's 8 equal parts. You do want to try to make these as equal as possible, so that when you put them onto your baking sheet, they're going to bake at the same time. Now I've just lightly sprayed my baking sheet, and if you notice, I'm going to stagger these. So one direction, the other direction. And that way I can just fit more on. They do need a little bit of space in between them because they will puff up, but they don't need tons of space. Now I'm just really quickly going to show you with this other ball that I've got here. So this was one that I had pre-made in advance. This one's going to have my berries inside. So it's a little bit different when you're putting berries inside, because when you're putting the berries inside, you can't mix it in with the dough, or at least if you do, what happens is the berries all end up mashing up. So I found a little way to kind of get around that, is I just will take my dough and then put my berries on, and then I kind of just press it down like this. Okay, if some pop up, don't worry. You can also put those on the top. So now I'm just going to kind of use my hands to press this down into a bit of a circle. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay, and then what I'm going to do from there is just cut that again into my 8 pieces. Okay, trying to make them about the same size. And then I'm going to go ahead and put those onto my baking sheet. Again, if they come apart, don't worry too much about it, because what you can just do is the ones that come out, just stick on top. Okay? Now I put double the amount of berries, and maybe that was part of my mistake, because I shouldn't have put quite so many on. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put these on the pan. Stay tuned to see how these turn out. All right, guys, 12 minutes have gone by. We timed it. Now we're ready to take it out. Opening oven door. Careful because it's hot. Reach in with your head pulled to the side. Make sure you've got your oven mitts on. Go ahead and place that on top of the stove, push in your rack, close up your door. Now, we're gonna check these before we turn off the oven. Now you can't tell the doneness so much from the top, although you can see those little tiny golden areas. That's what you're kind of looking for. When you make them with berries, what I have noticed is sometimes they need a little bit more time, but if you made yours with chocolate chips, more than likely, see how when I turn it over, it's beautifully golden on the bottom. That's what you're looking for. You don't want it golden on top. If it's golden on top, you've almost overcooked it, and then it's not as soft in the middle. So don't forget, these ones are done. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my oven, turn off my timer. If there's a light inside, make sure you turn that off too. Remember to clean up. Anyways, let me know how it turns out. Otherwise, signing off. Take care, you guys. Stay good. Stay safe.